What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So we had State of Play yesterday and Inside Xbox. There wasn't like any massive surprise or big, huge announcement, but we got some good release dates for things like Last of Us Part 2, and we now know when we can start at least trying out xCloud. So I'm going to go through some of the highlights from each of them for you guys so you can kind of get caught up on some of that stuff. And we do have an update now to the Switch Lite drifting issue. Remember, there was a video posted. Well, we have an update to that video from the same person who posted another video, and we're going to kind of talk a bit about what it sounds like is going on here. I did make a video before, so you can check that out. But we're going to go over some of that here as well. As always, guys, enjoy this videos. Make sure you hit the like button. It does help out. And get subscribed. A little notification bell on, and then you got to click something else. It's a whole thing. Just make sure you subscribe down below so you can keep up to date on all the different gaming news in the gaming world. And we're going to start today with the Switch Lite and its sell-in number. So how it sells through, of course, in Japan, they post it on Famitsu and everything, but we have some early numbers, it seems, and Daniel Ahmed went ahead and posted them online, as you're seeing here. This was on Twitter saying, Nintendo stock down 3.7% today after Switch Lite sell-through data has released for Japan. 114,000 units sold through during its first 3 days. The only problem with that, the reason the stock appears to be down, is because Citibank released a report saying that the figure was lower than expected and fell short of the 300,000 unit expectation in Japan. That's actually quite a few. In fact, Daniel Med goes on to say further, saying, if you ask me, looking at 3-day sell-through for a single country to judge the success of the Switch Lite makes zero sense. Switch Lite, due to the nature of its target audience, is much more likely to sell during the holiday period than during its first week, and I would agree with that, mostly because you're going to have parents that buy multiple Switch Lites, not just one. You're probably going to buy like 2 or 3 for the different kids, obviously, and it is cheaper when you start adding them up. When you stack up 3 Switch Lites compared to 3 regular Switches at the counter, you're saving $300, and that can be put towards games and stocking stuffers or even extra controllers if you need to, or probably cases. Cases make the most sense if you're buying for kids for something like that. So he's right here. We'll probably have to wait through the holidays to really look back and get a big picture on the Switch Lite, and we'll have Famitsu numbers straight up about Link's Awakening and how all of that affected the Switch Lite as well. So interesting stuff there, and we'll keep an eye on it. Also, we got to look at the box art for Final Fantasy VII Remake, as you're seeing here. Square posted this up on Twitter, and it says, we're proud to reveal Final Fantasy VII Remake's official box art for North America and Europe. Take on the oppressive Shinra Corporation as Cloud Strife on March 3rd. And this is an obvious callback, right, to the original. The cover art and everything makes a ton of sense to me. It's playing it safe. It looks good, I think. The only issue, and people are pointing this out, it just says Final Fantasy VII Remake. It doesn't say like Part 1 or some other type of like subheading or title or anything. It just says Final Fantasy VII Remake. Some are pointing at this and saying, well, that's misleading because it's not the entirety of Final Fantasy VII, despite them telling us several times over that it is going to be broken into parts because they want to dive into some of the lore and the backstory more so than they were able to in the original, where they kind of glossed over some things, which will be really, really interesting, specifically for people who are big fans of the story of Final Fantasy VII and the characters. Sounds like you're going to get quite a bit out of that world with these multiple releases that are going to be spanning multiple Blu-rays in some cases per release, but is that correct to not say something about it just being part of the overall experience? To me, what this says is they're probably going to go with the similar numbering structure of Final Fantasy VII-2, Final Fantasy VII-3, and so on, similar to 13. My only question with that is, did they always have the idea of 13 being multiples, right? And did they always have the idea of 10 being multiples? Because they didn't tell us that when they released them, but we already know about this with 7, so you figure they do something like Part 1 or a subheading or something. Let me know if you think this might be a little bit, I guess the right word would be just misrepresenting the overall idea of it. Let me know. Also, we've talked about Red Dead Redemption 2 coming to PC quite a few times now because it seems to make a lot of sense. It also makes sense that you would see, Take-Two and Rockstar possibly go to the Epic Games Store. Well, they have their own launcher now, and maybe that's where they want to go. But we saw a new classification, as you're seeing here, with a ratings of Red Dead Redemption 2, and this was in Australia, where they did a classification of MA 15+, which makes sense, under the category computer games for Red Dead Redemption 2, which would signal, I think most of us assume at that point, a PC release being announced, and the data classification was August 20th, 2019, and that could be coming up on some sort of announcement soonish. Again, not surprising. GTA 5 on PC has been a massive success, and the modding community has been really cool with it. while Rockstar has had their mix-ups with the modding community, I think Red Dead Redemption 2 is going to look amazing on the PC. It should get a full 60 and everything, 60 frames. And of course, you know that modding community is going to dive completely into that game. So I'm not surprised to hear about this. We'll just have to see whenever they want to actually announce it. And guys, some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's talk about the Switch Lite drifting that seems to be popping up online. Now, I will say some other people have talked to me about other cases of drifting with their Switch Lite. And what's caught me off guard about this is it seemed to be a wear and tear issue for the drift that a lot of us talk about currently, which is where underneath where the circuit board is, basically marks would be left and everything. It would have a hard time reading where the analog stick was when it was in its resting position or even when it was moving at times, and it would give false readings that would lead to drifts where your character would just kind of wander off on their own in something like Breath of the Wild as an example, or yes, spinning the camera even. Well, we saw that video where we talked about before from Alexis Javier that seemed to show with their Switch Lite where the camera was panning and everything on its own. However, they have posted another video talking about this, as you're seeing here, and they have a full description that tries to go over their experiences, and the more I looked at it, the more it seems that this is just a defective unit, as defective tends to happen with, well, anything that gets released nowadays, because it's seriously complicated electronics going on right now, right? A lot of moving parts, a lot of things trying to come together and happen, and you get defective things that tend to happen here. So in their description, they talk about this being an issue that comes and goes. Sometimes it drifts, sometimes it doesn't. And they also said that they noticed that depending on how much force they use to move the analog stick, it starts drifting. Now, they wanted to make another one because they said that people didn't seem to believe them. And yeah, you saw in the comments and everything. It was a little hard to believe that it would already start drifting, considering this was something people were concerned about going into it. And it seemed like a good way to get people to watch your videos and everything, or your video for it, you know, good way to grab attention. However, I did have other people send me that they were having issues with their Switch Lite, and I think at this point, I've seen 4 or 5 messages for it. So I think these are mostly defective units just from the factory. I've already pointed out that the stick itself appears to have some sort of design flaw with how it is now. Others have also broken it down and pointed the same thing out. So while the analog sticks themselves appear to be at fault that will take place over time, I think if they're coming out of the factory like that, there might just be an issue inside the analog stick, as, again, you know, we assume hundreds of thousands of these things being produced. You're going to get a couple that have these issues right away, much like we see the red rings or the yellow light on the PlayStation 3 or the Wii's that wouldn't read. I mean, the list goes on. The PlayStation 4 that wouldn't eject discs or would eject discs by accident. The Xbox One that just wouldn't turn on and would have blank video. It happens all the way around. So I think this is just chalking up to a case of defective rate of 1% to 2% until we see otherwise. My concern is down the road. 6 months from now, will this be something that really starts to pop up everywhere? That, I think, is when we would have a problem with drifting. Also, if you have had an issue with drifting with your Switch Lite, I would recommend going and changing it out immediately. Most times, even the stores that you buy it from, whether it's a GameStop, Walmart, or Target, you don't even have to send it to Nintendo necessarily. They'll just change it out there. I've seen that where they even have like a 30-day thing where they'll just change it out because you literally just got it from them. So I would check there, and then if not, Nintendo should replace it, no problem. Next up, let's talk about Sony's State of Play. This took place yesterday. It was about a 20-minute chunk of just video showing off different games, some of them indie games. One of them was a big announcement that everyone was waiting for. We all knew it was coming. And I think that was the biggest thing about State of Play and why I looked around the internet and saw a lot of people were kind of let down by it. There wasn't like a big surprise, right? Like if you watch something like Nintendo Direct, there are big surprises. If you watch E3, there are just big surprises by everyone, right? So when we see State of Play and people compare it, of course, to Nintendo Direct, we're thinking there's gonna be something really big, really cool there, and there really wasn't. It felt very expected, but let's take a look at this. I'm gonna start with right away. The Last of Us Part 2 was the reason to watch this State of Play. I think that's why most of us really showed up to it, at first at least, to see that. We ended up seeing limited edition consoles and stuff, but most of us showed up for this February 21st, about what I figured. I figured it'd be late February, early March, somewhere in there, and then that would leave room for Ghost of Tsushima to come out, not at the end of the year, like holiday, like how Death Stranding is in November. We could see Ghost of Tsushima in like September, for example, and then that would leave room for PlayStation 5 and maybe some sort of launch title with it that we would assume, and then, of course, everything we've seen now would be backwards compatible with the PlayStation 5, including Ghost of Tsushima, with probably some really cool patch that makes better visuals and everything. But The Last of Us Part 2, February 21st, looks amazing. And at the end, I know you might be wondering, yes, Joel was right there at the end. A great way to close it out. I do wonder if they had to necessarily show him or just leave that for the game, because they've done that with things like God of War. If you played through God of War, there is a point in time where they have something really cool that calls back to the old ones that we didn't necessarily know was going to happen going into it. So I get why they wanted to show him. That was a good way to kind of close it out and get ready for the launch in February. But it still, I wonder if they could have kept that. Anyway, there were also several other announcements we can go over, including a Death Stranding limited edition PlayStation 4 Pro bundle. I like the system. I don't like the controller. The controller looks funny. I understand it's supposed to be like the jar that the baby is in, but it just looks like a pea-colored controller, and that's immediately what everyone thought of, like myself. Humanity is another game they showed that at first I looked at it and I was like, is this like a Lemmings game that's been updated to current times? We need to see a bit more information about that one. And then Medieval has a demo. You can go right now. You can go download the demo, and you actually get an item while playing through it for the full game, and I think this game definitely needed a demo, so it's good to see that. We saw Call of Duty Modern Warfare's campaign a bit more. We saw a game called Watum, which is coming December 2019 from, that's actually from the Katamari Damacy creator, which is interesting. I'm willing to give these games a chance because they are usually pretty out there and insane, but it's still very creative, so I'll check that one out. Civilization 6, also coming to the PlayStation 4, we had a fairly large, like I would say large for VR kind of montage, and then we also had LA Noire VR case files on the PlayStation 4 now as well. So if you're a VR fan, you're probably excited to check that one out. That actually makes a lot of sense for VR because you're supposed to be looking at people and trying to read them. And we got a bit more information about some of the special editions as well for Last of Us Part 2, with one being $250, but it had statue and everything would look pretty cool. I don't know if I'll get that. I'll probably just get the regular one, but hey, for fans of Last of Us Part 2, I'm sure you're very excited. And there's one other little bit of information that was kind of interesting. It seems that Best Buy's listing says that it's going to be 2 Blu-rays or 2 discs that come with the game. So we're thinking the game is so large, like Red Dead Redemption 2, they're gonna have an install disc and a play disc. So this thing could be close to 100 gigabytes in size, which is insane. This is gonna be a massive game. Of course, there's a full multiplayer that's going to be done with it. So exciting stuff there for Last of Us fans. You've got to be really excited right now. Otherwise, though, I would say state of play, if I look at it, average. I think The Last of Us Part 2, the ending thing, really saved the entire show. That was massive high point right there. Next up, let's talk about Inside Xbox. Unfortunately, there's not like a ton to talk about with Inside Xbox. They announced a few games specifically for Game Pass on PC. So Ultimate Game Pass, like Dirt Rally 2.0, they had Saints Row in there and everything. It wasn't like massive, to be honest, and I think most people overlooked that. The big announcement from Inside Xbox would definitely be xCloud. xCloud is something we've been waiting for, we've been waiting to hear more about, because Google Stadia is shipping pretty soon, right? November. So what's going on with xCloud? Well, it looks like Microsoft is going to beat Google Stadia, at least to market for us to try it. And that's happening next month in October. In fact, you can sign up now to become part of the preview program where we're going to be trying out Halo 5, Gears 5, and Killer Instinct. I think this makes sense. I would have preferred to see a driving game in there. They specifically named those 3, and that doesn't necessarily mean they can't add something like Forza Horizon 4. I understand Killer Instinct. It's a fighting game. We want to see how the latency and the button presses are going to be. I have my doubts big time for fighting games. But, I mean, Halo, okay, I mean, that could work through the campaign. I still question the multiplayer aspect, and Gears 5 as well, same deal there. But it's going to be interesting to see that. Now, you do need, at this time, an Android cell phone. They have several listed. I saw Samsung and everything there, so Google Pixel, I believe. So if you have some of the more flagship phones, you should be completely compatible with this. And you also need a Bluetooth Xbox One controller. So one of the newer ones would be we want to pick up. Like I picked up a newer white controller, I think last year, and that one was Bluetooth ready. So you're gonna need a Bluetooth one so you can sync to your phone and start playing. I am excited to try this out. I signed up right away, and I want to see this future of streaming. I want to see what all this noise is about. Because if it's not good, then we'll just move on. But if there's something there, it could be a good, I'm gonna say this, complimentary service. I don't think it, for me anyway, it won't replace games being local, but I can see why some people might look at this and say, okay, you know what? I can play it on my cell phone while I'm out, you know, whether you're at the DMV for like 2 hours or something, something like that. So I can at least see that. However, I guess you'd have to take your Xbox controller with you. It doesn't sound very convenient. And our last bit of news, this is just, I want to go over this real quick. This is, I can't believe we're talking about Fallout 76 again. Now, look, Fallout 76 has seen improvements. People are actually enjoying it much more now than it was before. However, it probably should have launched in this state rather than launch in the state it did and then just spend time fixing it pretty much. That probably shouldn't have happened. However, we had so many other problems, whether it was with the canvas bag, for example, or the cash shop slowly becoming something that would affect gameplay despite promises not to. And now we're to the point where those special edition Nuka-Cola helmets are being recalled, and I'm not kidding. And okay, here's the quote. Mold can be present on the fabric insert inside the helmet, posing a risk of respiratory or other infections in individuals with compromised immune systems, damaged lungs, or an allergy to mold. This is a recall notice for 20,000 units, which were made from the United States Consumer Product Safety Commission website. Yeah, that's where we are. Those helmets apparently have mold. Well, that's what they're saying anyway, and they need to recall them. Now, these are actually the ones that were specifically sold at GameStop. So now GameStop has to be taking them back in, giving full $150 refunds that then I guess have to go back to Bethesda. And wow, Fallout 76, what can we say at this point? Am I surprised? Honestly, no. It's Fallout 76. It's a legend that'll live on forever at this point. We'll just look back on Fallout 76. You just remember that game. They just couldn't get out of their own way, right? And this is just the latest instance of it, and it is absolutely insane. But that's where we are. Helmets that apparently have molds on the inserts inside, or at least the chance to, and then cause actual health problems to the customers. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This one is from Neil Stacy saying Link's Awakening and just Zelda overall has a large fan base. That's why the sales numbers are doing well at launch. I believe if Nintendo wants it to be an evergreen title, then I feel they will have to reduce the price. Link's Awakening doesn't have the value and notoriety of Breath of the Wild, Mario Odyssey, or Mario Kart, in my opinion, to entice newcomers. Personally, I'm a fan and already picked up a copy. However, looking at it objectively, I see the sales losing steam soon. And I don't think you're necessarily wrong about that. In fact, I look at Link's Awakening as a great title down the road for either a pack-in bundle title or part of whatever their new Nintendo Selects for the Switch end up being called. That would make a ton of sense. I mean, consider with the 3DS, they slashed the prices down to $19.99, was it? And they added in things like Ocarina of Time 3D, Link Between Worlds, and those were their Nintendo Selects titles. And I think that would make sense here too, to do that with something like Link's Awakening. And then, to be honest, Breath of the Wild will probably be $6 for a long time. I don't know if they'll ever really mark that one down, but Link's Awakening seems a perfect one to either package it or eventually mark down the price. But right now it's selling. They won't do it soon. This could be something that's like a year or two down the road, and they're like, hey, Nintendo Selects titles, here we go, Link's Awakening, ARMS, 1-2 Switch, and so on. That's probably what'll end up happening with it. Ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit the like button, it really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about today, whether it's the moldy Fallout 76 helmet, I guess, or maybe we'll talk a bit about State of Play and what you liked and what you didn't like, or Last of Us Part 2. It looks amazing. The release date's good in February. Excited for that. Or maybe we'll talk a bit about xCloud, or even the Switch Lite drifting problems that we're seeing pop up. I think they're more about defective numbers rather than just the actual drifting problem we've seen over wear and tear. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.